Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. Keir Starmer is a two-faced liar, straight out. He is blaming Southport not on a Muslim extremist. He's blaming it on the internet. He's saying that what kids see on the internet affects the rest of their lives, and he says we must have internet censorship. This is, of course, sheer bollocks, because internet censorship is what he wants, and he's using this Southport tragedy as his excuse to do it, because he hates the internet. He loathes free speech. He hates the idea that people like you and me and many, many others can go onto the internet and say things, because he can't control it. He can't ban it. He can't police it. And of course, it's dead easy to do this. And so for him, if we can censor the internet, then we can clamp down on the people, remove their rights to free speech, remove from them the ability to talk to each other, to ban each other. This, of course, is why they're actually getting rid of landlines. Have you noticed this? It's all going to be digital. And the reason is this: should a tragedy happen, something very big, we can get onto the landline phone and we can talk to each other. Because you can't just switch off landline phones. You have to actually go to an exchange. You have to send people out to exchange, and turn them off. Whereas if it's a digital system, click of a button, gone. And we can't communicate with each other. And they can close down the television so you can't hear what's happening. And they can close down the radio so you can't hear what's happening. They can keep you in the dark. They can't do that with the internet, of course. And let's say you've got something like, for example, a Starlink system. They can't turn your Starlink system off. You're communicating directly with the satellites. And so, you can still get the internet. Absolutely you can. And so they don't like that. And we can communicate. And we don't like that. Oh, well, we don't want people talking. We don't want people blaming politicians for all that's going on. Now, he's stood there and he has made this speech, and he is rejecting the fact that he has got anything to do with it. His party is still letting in thousands upon thousands of illegal immigrants who we know nothing about. They could stop that, but they're choosing not to. So yes, Keir Starmer, it is down to you. He's saying it's not my fault. Yes, I knew things, but I wasn't allowed to say, contempt of court. That's bollocks. That's lies. The man is a lying, two-faced arse. And he is absolutely looking into the camera lens, as I'm doing now, and lying to your face. Because all those other times things have been said, they weren't contempt of court on every other action previously. And he was talking about, the far right, they're far right. He didn't know they're far right. Why? That's contempt of court. The moment he blames someone as being far right, that court case cannot go ahead, surely, by his argument. Those people languishing in prison shouldn't be in prison by his argument, because he spoke and called them far right. That would have alienated their rights to a free and fair trial. Get them out of prison and blame Keir Starmer because he opened his mouth and contempt of court. Put Starmer in prison for contempt of court. His argument, not mine. Now, he's hiding, of course, behind this contempt of court argument, which we say is completely untrue. We've had all those other, the 7/7 attacks and things like that. And then people just come out. No court said, that'll happen. Lee Rigby, no court put that down. Anything. Why this one? Well, who knows? They knew everything. Why were they saying there was no terrorism? They knew, right? So, of course, he's addressing this nation in a bid to, I think, take control of the narrative. Try and bring the narrative back around him so that he can control what's being said. Again, this is the internet thing. He can't control that, and he doesn't like that. And so when you have people languishing in prison because they said, no, it was a Muslim extremist who beheaded these children, and that person was then locked up, foretelling the truth, He wants this narrative that he can control. He does not want the truth coming out, that's clear. He's still, of course, refusing. For some reason, weirdly, he's still refusing to call this an act of terrorism, even though the guy had a terrorism manual in his possession and a weapon of mass destruction. And his own words were extreme violence that were meant to cause terror. The man is a fuckwitted oaf. He's contradicting himself because he's such a massive bellend. Now, he says the approach to secrecy at the time, he says, was morally correct. It was there. I did not want to cause contempt of court or risk the trial. But it's clear now that Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, those around them, knew everything that was going on. It's clear. They knew it all. They knew his referrals to Prevent. They knew the terrorism issue. They knew, for example, of his past history of very violent acts, of knifings, of beatings, or of things he did in school. They knew about the Islamist manual of terror. They knew about the weapon of mass destruction, the ricin. And as they knew all this, they were branding the people far right because they spoke the truth. He hates the truth. And of course, that's leading back again to censorship of the internet. When there was the attacks on Joe Cox, nobody said it was anything other than terror. And they weren't blaming people talking about it as being far right, were they? Keith Palmer, again, another one. The Manchester bombing, the Westminster bombing. All sorts of things. People were talking about this. They weren't held in contempt of court and they weren't addressed as far right. Why is it that we do it? Starmer immediately said, stop it, you're far right, you're far right. We're not. We're concerned citizens with a genuine desire to find out the truth of what's happening on our streets because politicians have allowed the scum of the earth to come here uncontrolled. And we're rightly scared of the rise of Islam in this country, which is removing rights from women and is causing troubles and strife up and down this nation. And so he's still hiding, like behind his mother's apron strings, but using this time contempt of court as his excuse. And it's simply untrue. And when MPs themselves were banned from asking questions in the House of Commons against the very right that they have, what would they have done? Would they have done him for contempt? If Nigel had stood up in the House and asked those questions and got that out into the public domain, they couldn't have arrested him. He has that right. He has that privilege. Would a speaker actually remonstrate with an MP for using a right and privilege that MPs have? If he had, it would be the end of him as a speaker. There would be a mass protest. I wish Nigel had have done it. We need a new government. We need to try Keir Starmer for treason. And we need to make sure that the entire Labour Party are held accountable for this. It was, after all, Tony Blair who opened the doors to the scum of the world. But to label people far right when they're just simply right is morally terrible, ethically awful, and it goes against any sense of justice this country ever had. And then to come out and say he wants to censor what we see, what we hear, and more importantly, what we say, that's the act of a dictator. Also, folks, go out and get yourself a VPN. Make yourself log in from America. There's nothing they can do. You are in America. They can't track you. They can't find you. Just give yourself a false name on there and away you go and say, screw you, Steer. Queer Steer. The killer of kids. Thanks a lot. Bye.